We are here at the Washington State Horse Expo, and I'm here with Stacy Westfall. Thank you so much, Stacy, for joining us. And today I want to talk a little bit about horse safety. Do you have any good tips or information for our readers?
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about it, and on my podcast, I was sharing about a horse spooking, because I'm training a young horse, because I train a lot of young horses. And so I brought up the fact that my young horse spooked, and I kind of outlined a whole bunch of the, reasons why, but I also said a couple interesting things that seemed to have triggered a spark of interest. So I said, I don't really feel that comfortable until I know with a young horse how they're going to spook, what a spook's going to be like, how they're going to respond to what they're supposed to have learned at the moment that it's the most needed, which is when their mind has checked over into something else and I need to call their mind back to me. But it was kind of interesting because I did the podcast kind of just explaining what happened and how it's actually, to me, almost like, it's like when you're teaching. I remember teaching my kids as they were growing up. You're teaching them things, but then when you send them out into the world, like, you don't know exactly what they're going to do when they're out of your sight. And I know it sounds like it's a different thing, but it's a little bit like I'm teaching my horse, and I don't know what they're going to do when push comes to shove. Like when that loud noise happens over there and everybody's down there and you want to go down there, but I tell you can't go down there, or like what method of are you going to respond or not? And so what I found really interesting about it was that I said in one of the future follow-up podcasts, I don't have a problem dismounting from a horse if I think things are not going well. But that brought up a whole nother thing where people were like, but what do you mean you're going to dismount? Because you're going to dismount, you're going to reinforce this negative, bad behavior. And I was like, on the surface, I can see how you could think that, but two ideas. Number one, I'm dismounting way before what I think you guys are thinking. So let's put some numbers around it. So I go out on a trail ride and I see people whose horses are worked up on a scale of, like, let's say we ride a horse and, and we expect a certain level of control, and we're going to call that 100%. Now, 100% on a horse with 90 days is not the same thing as 100% on a horse with 2 years. Typically, there's a difference in the training level. But when I start to detect things aren't going well, especially if I'm thinking, when I mean not going well, this could end very dangerously for both of us, I'm thinking about these as problems when I'm in the 10% change range. And I go to a trail ride and I see people that are mounting up on horses that I wouldn't mount up on, which literally means they're mounting up on a horse that's like whinnying and spinning in circles and won't stand, and they get on and the horse is flipping its head. And I'm thinking, either this is their baseline normal and they're accepting this, or they're not acknowledging that they've experienced a 50% loss of control before they even began. So I think some discussions are necessary around safety and, like, the idea that the old adage of get right back on because you don't want to teach the horse anything bad might be misleading in a way, because maybe you missed a whole bunch of signs. And getting back on, when, like, if your car loses the brakes and I'm like, come on, man, you're going to teach that. No, in the analogy, the car's not going to learn, but if your horse has no brakes, it's the same thing as your car not having any brakes. You can have a loss of training and understanding and comprehension to the level of having a horse with no brakes, which is like having a car with no brakes. And just getting back on doesn't make any sense. You at some point have missed a lot of steps. It's a thought.
Yeah. So what about the horse that is spinning and having a fit after you get on and they've spun up afterwards?
It's so interesting because it's so rare, and in today's demonstration it'll be interesting because there are so many signs you can see on the ground. And I think the advantage of knowing a horse, well, it comes in a couple ways. Like, I show up at an expo like this and I don't know the horses, but I get quick reads and start going like, I don't know, those are some sketchy things because of experience. The opposite of it is, if you're in a relationship with a person, like let's say it's a coworker, you can go in and you can tell if your coworker's having a bad day. And they don't have to be like, I'm having a bad day.
Right.
You know they're having a bad day.
Yeah.
And you have a sense of this kind of stuff. I actually think a lot of times people block some of that out of fear of being judged by other riders, out of fear of letting down the group of riders they went to meet up with. I think that people actually don't give themselves enough credit for some of the intuition, and they just go ahead and push through it. And when you push through something you don't understand, beware. Beware, because especially when you're climbing on top of a horse, which is essentially kind of like a car, and you lose the steering or you lose the brakes, it's a big deal.
Yeah. So where can people find the podcast that you're discussing?
You can find it if you're already a podcast listener. You can find it on any podcast player on your iPhone or your Android. You can download Stitcher. iPhones come with it already on there as a podcast app, and you just search for Stacy Westfall podcast. And if you don't already listen to podcasts, you can go to my website, stacywestfall.com, and you can click on them and listen to them directly on the website.
Oh, that's great. Well,
Yeah.
Stacy, thank you so much for sharing some tips with our readers. And if anybody is in the vicinity of Ridgefield this weekend, come down to the expo and get a signed copy of the Horse Source magazine with her on the cover. And thank you so much for
right.
sharing some tips with our readers.
You're welcome.
Come on down and see her later. Thank you.